Good morning. Actually out today, one is on their way, but we will try to stay on schedule and get started. And we're pleased to have an update from Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. And I ran into Mark on the way in. He said, I believe Ellis is going to do the presentation, but if you want to introduce everybody or whatever, as we're pretty informal, and then we can get going. Morning.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, we have the whole team here. So Mark, JT Warren, and Trey Blackwood from our team here to represent. Grateful for your time this morning. Can I drive with us? Okay. So we just have a brief economic development update for you, kind of covering the activity we had wrapping up 2025, and a few trends to highlight as we move into the new year. We always start with our goals. As you know, we're halfway through our 2030 strategic plan and well on our way to achieving these goals, to be the top mid-sized city for economic growth, to be a more equitable community, and to continue to be what we believe is the best place to raise a family. To put some numbers to that, we passed the 3,000 jobs announced threshold at the end of 2025 with over $800 million of capital investment committed since 2020. For a bit of perspective, that's nearly 3,000 jobs just in the past 5 years, which well exceeds the 2,000 jobs announced in the previous decade. We're consistently averaging between 400 and 500 jobs announced per year, and that consistency is what's enabled us to meet that goal. For a snapshot of where we stand today, we're currently working 86 active projects, representing a potential 20,000 jobs and $18 billion of capital investment. 21 site visits happened in 2025, so that 86 number includes many of those site visits that are still considering Forsyth County. A few quick activity trends and highlights for you from the year. That first box shows you our average project size, which was $452 million in potential capital investment. The reason for that spike is we had a large number of data center projects and large-scale manufacturing projects, and you can see how that compares to the trends of the previous years. Another really important and sort of staggering shift for us was the average quarterly project intake went from 32 to 39 last year. So we're very grateful for the county's support to add to our staff capacity to meet those inquiries. And we're expecting that that level of activity will stay consistent at least through the beginning of this year as well. And then in terms of where our projects are coming from, 45% of our client visits last year were from international sources. So still very high FDI activity. We thought that might taper off about halfway through last year, but it's remained pretty consistent. I'm quickly going to cover the projects you are already very familiar with, many of which you have supported, that announced last year. Polyvlees, as you know, announced 28 jobs, followed by GMAX announcing 36 jobs. Excited to have a life science related win early in the year last year. Reagent Chemical Services announced 30 new jobs. We're hoping that their ribbon cutting will happen here in the next few months. And then Modular Closets in the fall. This company did not receive any incentives from state or local. They're a fantastic company locating in Kernersville. I'm really excited about what they're going to bring to our community. And then WH Farms, you guys are familiar with. Thank you for your support on this project as well. Anticipating 41 jobs in the coming years. A few other highlights and wins I wanted to point out from the end of last year and beginning of this year. We were fortunate to receive the #4 ranking from Global Location Strategies for best place for food manufacturing in the country. This is a really incredible accomplishment and really a testament to our workforce strength here, our community college strength, but also a lot of things we've just been blessed with as a community to be in a central location on the East Coast, transportation corridors, all of those sorts of things. Our goal for 2026 is to leverage this ranking in our recruitment efforts and specifically target more food and beverage projects. We also launched our BioNest Fund at the end of 2025. The goal of this fund was really to support growth stage life science companies that aren't eligible for traditional state and local incentives. They might just be a bit below that threshold for incentives to be an option for them in terms of tax incentives. So this is funded by Whitaker Park Development Authority. When we set out to establish this fund, our goal was to support 4 companies in the first year, hoping that that would generate about 20 jobs in the next 3 years. But since September, we've supported 3 companies and a total of 37 jobs, already exceeding our goal with an average salary among those of $82,000 per year. And lastly, this is some really fun news that I'm sure you guys are well aware of from the past week. But the German men's national soccer team has chosen Winston-Salem-Forsyth County as their training base for the 2026 World Cup. This has been such a fun project for our team to work on and a really incredible testament to the collaboration of our community. We worked alongside Visit Winston-Salem, obviously Wake Forest University and Grayland, alongside our state partners at EDP&C and the Department of Commerce too. The opportunity for this is somewhat obvious in terms of the attention that it will bring to our community, the stays and the revenue that will come from the team being here and all of their staff and support agencies. But from an economic development lens, we're excited about this because Germany is such an important trade partner for the state of North Carolina. There's over 270 German companies based in North Carolina. It is the #1 state for new business attraction in the past decade for the state. So thinking about leveraging this in the years to come, what could that look like to continue to strengthen our trade and business relationship with the country of Germany? And that is all I had.
Es ist ausgezeichnet.
I will second that.
Lieben Dank.
Any questions that I can answer?
Maybe comment a little bit about those that are visiting and inquiring. The fear I think is the site issues, the fact that we don't have a lot of
Yes.
new sites that are sewered, et cetera. And I'm just kind of curious of how much do you think, how many people are we losing because of that? And are the people that are interested, is it subject, are they really looking for someplace? Are there, I know we have a few, I know we have some properties, some inventory.
Yes.
That's out there, but I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. Fortunately, over the past 6 months, and I have actual data and numbers that we can share with you to back this up, most of our inquiries have corresponded well with the sites that we have available. That is not always the case, but fortunately, over the past 6 months or so, that has been true. A lot of inquiries in that sub 200 acre range and a lot looking for speculative buildings, of which we have a few coming out of the ground right now. So we've had a lot of opportunity, or at least at bats. It is certainly a concern looking 2, 3, 5 years down the road to make sure that we continue to have sites available. Our largest available site was previously taken off the market because of a competitive offer, but it's been put back on the market. So even though that's sometimes frustrating, it's exciting to have another large marketable site. So for the time being, we feel pretty good about our site inventory, but it's something we need to continue to be proactive about preparing, especially looking at the 3-5 year horizon. Good question.
Good. Other questions?
Thank you so much.
Mark?
Mr. Chair, if I may just quickly add, I'll come up next to Ellis. Apologies for not being as dressed up. I'm gonna be outside and it's really cold. Just also want to thank the county and been working with utilities and planning on the lift station, because as we are looking ahead, those opportunities for the lift station for sewer to be expanded into basin areas and areas such as around Union Cross already that have proven to be really great options for that. That's something that we're really focused on, that when she's talking about 2, 3, 4 years down the road, those sites will be critical for us. So thank you for continuing to keep the lift station at the top of the minds and agendas for that, which is really helpful. Just
Well,
wanted
yeah,
to add
at least that one's happening. The
Right.
real question is, yeah, we can do another one that goes further south and opens up closer to Union Cross, but the real question I have is I mean, I was driving 74 yesterday, you know, of the bypass, and there's a lot of land and a lot of, I mean, great transportation access, and it's in our, you know, 2045 plan as an area to grow to, and it's like the next sort of sewer design piece, should it be there? I mean, that's kind of, everybody has their own opinion about that, but it could certainly go in that direction. And the design work is expensive and time-consuming. And the good news is that we probably will have money left over from our 20 million that could be applied to the design work for another section. And the question is, which is the best section to go?
That's a good question. I think that site study that we partnered with has been really helpful in identifying some areas. Obviously, as you know, as we go further north in the county, it gets rockier in the ground, which makes it a little more complicated. But those site study may also provide.
Yeah, and I'll add that utilities and planning and our community and economic development team and are still meeting to kind of move that forward. There are some additional funds. You know, I think the most easily accessible next site is the Abbott's Creek watershed that's east of the Wahlberg area. But certainly there was identified in the sewer master plan as well, some area within the Beltway, around the Beltway that is not sewered yet, that could be gravity sewered. So there are still opportunities in the northeast as well along the Beltway that we are looking at.
What is the acreage of the largest industrial site?
147 acres contiguous.
Thank you. We're not Stokes County.
No. But we still have lots of opportunity.
I was going to say, thank goodness.
All righty. Any other questions?
Just a minute. I'm very excited about everything I've heard, but I have to, as a member of TDA, say I'm so excited about the Germans team coming to Winston-Salem and what that's going to do for tourism.
Yes.
And made a great decision to team up, TDA to team up with Greater Winston-Salem. So this is the first project that we can see what a great deal it is. Thank you.
Very grateful for their partnership. Great.
All righty.
Thank you all so much.
Madam Vice Chair, I know, Mr. Chair, you said it was a little more informal. Apologies. Madam Vice Chair, I just want to add to, we just started 2 days ago, our Community Strategic Action Plan, which we also partnered with Visit Winston-Salem on. The Visit Winston-Salem was working on a destination plan. Greater Winston-Salem Inc. was working on a community plan about economic development growth, where it takes in for 2045 all the different plans and gets us some vision and action pieces. And we got together with Stephanie and the TDA, and we're doing that together. So we co-hired consultants. We're doing that whole process together. So we have another win, in addition to Germany. We're just working really closely together on this project.
Good.
And it's been fantastic. And the German win, I'm not sure we fully understand how big of a deal it's going to be yet with the amount of media members and things. So hopefully they will keep winning, and the longer they win, the longer they're here. They've been incredible, and we already have gotten calls from CEOs of companies in Germany that want to come visit while they're here. So we're going to really maximize that.
Good. Thank you.
Apologies for keep walking up and back.
No, that's
That's
right.
good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. All righty. Our second item is really a longer follow-up with Planning and Development Services, and glad to have Chris here to kind of gave us I think it was at the end of a long meeting the last time, but we got an update on this. I think we're going to get a little more, a few more details today.
Good morning.
Morning.
Before I launch into this, I will just take the opportunity, I always like to try to find a way to have a good segue, and the information that you brought up related to economic development and trying to find ways and places to spur additional economic development, you know, part of the Forward 2045 plan and the work that was done on the economic development study did identify that as a potential growth area. We are launching our first set of area plan meetings, and the first area plan that we are going to do is the Northeast Suburban Area Plan, which encompasses a wide swath of the northeastern section of the city, but goes all the way out past the Beltway and to the county line, sort of in between Rural Hall and Blues, the Blues Creek area. So that kicks off on January 28th at the Forsyth County Transportation Center campus up off Patterson Avenue, and I believe the meeting starts at 6. So anyway, that will certainly be part of that focus, is trying to identify areas for economic development that makes sense close to the Beltway. Again, trying to find ways to spur that economic development and job and tax-based creation. With that, I will start my presentation, but on this slide, I just want to make sure before I actually jump into it that the two things we are going to cover would be the potential annexation policy if the commissioners are interested, and also potential view corridors. As far as the annexation, I just want to make it clear that this would be voluntary annexation. There is no involuntary annexation that's probable, just because of what you have to do and the way that the citizenry has an input into that now. Involuntary annexation is not easy. So this would be voluntary annexation. If a policy were adopted, this would be related to development proposals for subdivisions and PRDs and those kind of things that would be adjacent to or straddling the city-county line. The other thing is this is not retroactive. This would be moving forward. So the examples that are shown both in the memo that was sent out and on the PowerPoint presentation that I have are just examples of existing development that do kind of either straddle or lie adjacent to that line. So with that, I will launch in. As you did allude to, I believe it was back in October or November when the last time we did a planning had an update, we did present a number of things that we felt like we needed some direction from the commissioners, and it was the desire of the commissioners to bring this back to a morning bi-monthly session for some additional discussion and feedback. And that's really what I want to do. I want to kind of run through this, but then just have a conversation on things that the commissioners would like us to pursue or not pursue, if that be the choice. As far as public policy and dealing with annexation, as the memo alluded to, we are 20 years down the line from the last involuntary annexation that the city was able to do. And again, in the late 2000s, there was a change to the annexation policy, which basically prevents involuntary annexation. And we're kind of seeing the results of that now. As development comes online, where we have things that kind of straddle that line. We actually even have some lots that are bisected by the city-county line, and some of the things some of the issues that poses as far as complications, dealing with delivery of services, of trash and those kind of things, emergency response issues, and I'm not very well versed on this. Kyle might have some better insight than I do, but whenever someone calls 911 and they're in a development, and that development has both city and county in it, sometimes there's an uncertainty on who needs to respond and trying to figure out who does need to go. And obviously in an emergency, every second is crucial. I did mention the split lots and split developments. There are some instances where, like I said, you actually have lots that are split on the city-county line. And while it's something that the tax office has to figure out as far as how it's going to be taxed and those kind of things, it's a one-time thing. Once that formula is figured out, they don't have to redo it, but it's just something else that kind of complicates the matter. Confusion amongst residents in the neighborhood. Whenever they move in, you've got some neighbors that vote on the city council election and the county commissioners, and some that are just the county. They don't know who to necessarily call for service. If they talk to their neighbor and the neighbor's in the city and they're in the county, they might just be getting conflicting information. Street maintenance and acceptance. There are different standards for NCDOT streets and acceptance versus the city. Whenever you have a road that both straddles the city and the county, who is going to do that acceptance, who is going to be responsible for that maintenance. Sidewalks and sidewalk maintenance. For a development that's wholly within the city maintains sidewalks as part of the infrastructure standards within the city. NCDOT will allow a sidewalk within their subdivision, but they don't maintain them, which then would fall back on the citizens to maintain that sidewalk through a homeowners association or something like that. And consistency in standards, even though the UDO is probably between 95 and 97% the same between the city and the county, there are some regulations that are different. And whenever you have a development that kind of splits that line, you have some citizens that are subject to some standards that aren't subject to other folks within the same development. So those are just some of those issues. Again, I think the memo that was sent out, probably elaborated on that a little bit more, but I just want to mention that basically the rest of this is just looking at, and I'm not sure why my labels didn't show up on here. I guess I may have just done that in the memo, but these are just some examples of situations where you have developments that were constructed that straddle the line or adjacent to the line or kind of a wedge of the county between areas of the city. Got some situations where you've got some split lots on this project. You've got some split lots on this project. You have the first part of the development in this example here that is within the city, and then it transitions to county. So you've got trash trucks that have to come into this development and service a few lots and then have to go down and turn around and come back out. And then similarly, I'm not sure which area of the county this is for the rural garbage collection and which service it is, but they would be coming in and doing the same thing. It may be on the same day, it may be on a different day. This is an example of, where part of the subdivision was annexed and part of it was not, and that probably that first part perhaps was annexed during the involuntary annexation in the late 2000s, but then you've got all the remainder that hasn't been annexed. And it's even further complicated is, I believe, this area where I'm showing my mouse here, I pulled this screen grab probably a year to 18 months ago whenever I first started talking to the county manager about this. I believe this area has now been annexed into the city. So you're going over city streets to county streets and back into potentially city streets. Again, just a confusion amongst residents.
Chris,
Yes, ma'am.
would everyone in the development have to agree to the volunteer?
Well, and again, going back to what I first said, this is really just showing you examples. Let's just say that for some reason, again, I don't know how the commissioners feel, but if you decided that you wanted to have some type of a policy where you had, if you were adjacent to the city or you had a split jurisdiction within the development that they needed to annex into the city, it would be going forward. In this example right here, nothing with this annexation policy would dictate that anyone in this development would have to annex, because this is an existing situation. We're just looking moving forward. But let's just say that if this development didn't exist and you had this configuration of city and county here, and someone brought in a development and wanted to lay it out exactly like this, from a policy perspective, would it not make better sense to recommend that they annex the development into the city prior to beginning construction? And that way, if a citizen, if someone comes in and buys one of those lots, they're buying it knowing that they're in the city. It wouldn't be retroactive. So we're not talking about doing any type of annexation of an existing residence. This is just moving forward.
I guess where choice is eliminated is with the developer, him or herself. I mean, essentially, if you make a policy, in this particular case, with that the part that's going to develop down there that looks like it's roughed in, it's right down there in that area that you believe is in the city now, and what you're saying is that the developer of that site, if that policy in place, they'd have no choice, they'd be in the city. If we had a policy like that, they'd be in the city. So the developer does not have a choice. They can say, well, either I can do this in the city, or I can go do work somewhere else because I don't want to do it, or whatever else it is.
Well, again, depending on how the policy was written, more than likely, you are correct.
Yeah, that's where the choice, and in that case, if that part there in the sort of the way I'm looking at it would be sort of the southeastern corner, that a big rectangle. You talk about services. You've got the northwest and the southeast covered in the city, and then you've got the northeast and the southwest over there. Holy cow! You talk about garbage truck problems. I'm assuming there is an exit out there on the bottom side, so it would be accessible, but that's pretty messy. Good example of the messy.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, that's what these are, examples. So anything, if the commissioners decided to have a policy that tried to address, these situations or similar situations, again, it would not be retroactive. It would just be for anything in the future. This is another example. This is east of Peters Creek Parkway. You've got a development that is within the city, but then it connects into a development that's within the county. Again, this isn't as bad of an example of some of the other ones. I mean, I think it's kind of clear the line of where the line of demarcation is, but it's just an example of if there was some type of policy and they were hooking on to a city street and it was adjacent to the city, if there were a policy and it met that guide, then or met the criteria, then this would be would come into the city. This is an example down off of Darwick where you've got a lot of different things going on. You've got a lot of city there. You've got some stuff on the north side that's almost totally surrounded by the city, or surrounded at least on 3 sides by city property. You've got the piece kind of in the southwest that is wholly on its own, that's not in the city. There are some issues with street maintenance in that area related to city versus county and, or NCDOT, and they are concerned, the folks that live down there are concerned because NCDOT never accepted those streets. This development kind of got caught in between the annexation provisions and like the area to the west and northwest was part of an annexation, but this was not. So these streets were never annexed into the city. The development was never annexed into the city. Those streets were never taken over by NCDOT. So you have a situation where you have kind of orphan streets that aren't maintained by anyone. So again, just an example of some issues with inconsistency and potential cost considerations for the citizens that have bought into that, and that their streets aren't being maintained. Again, it's not going to address that problem if there were a policy, but it would prevent this from happening in the future.
I think I got a call from someone on Joshua Lane a few months ago, puzzled about why they couldn't get city trash pickup. So.
Right. Yeah, and that was part of, again, I think it was in the memo, it was part of the initial part of the presentation. Yeah, that's just one of those things where, and again, if they talk to their neighbor, it's like, why are you getting city trash and I'm not? And just a whole lot of uncertainty on those kind of things.
Well, oftentimes if they realize they have to pay city and county tax, they're not so concerned about that.
Right.
Especially right now.
This is a development that holds a special place in some folks' heart that, anyway, this is just an example. This kind of lies in between Brookberry and Shallowford Road. It's a development where the first part of this development is within the city and there's a part that's not. But again, the area to the north, that MUS and Brookberry, all of that will eventually be city as the development is brought online. Because they actually had agreed to voluntary annexation as part of their approval of the MUS to begin with. So as they develop phases, they do annex into the city. So this development will be surrounded on 3 sides by the city. These streets will be interconnected. You'll go from the city into the county and back into the city. Again, from a service delivery standpoint, issues with trash collection, those kind of things, you're getting duplicative services and duplicative trucks within a development. Uncertainty on who to call in the case of emergency, who comes out, et cetera. Another example, this is a commercial and multifamily development on the north end of Brookberry there at Olivet Church Road and Robin Hood Road. This is a development where the first few homes in the development are within the city, and then it transitions to not being within the city. So, you know, I'm going to we can kind of put a pin in the annexation part of this, and I do just want to transition quickly to the view corridors, which was one of the other things that was mentioned at my last update. Just a little bit of history and a little bit of background. You know, view corridors essentially prohibit the placement of off-premises signs or billboards. The view corridors have not been expanded since the late 1980s, except adopting the exact path of the Beltway in the late 2010s. So where the Beltway is now shown, the city and the county did adopt the specific corridor for that. But other than that, there haven't been any other new corridors added. There was already a corridor that protected the Beltway, but it wasn't on the map. It was just a generalized statement that the Beltway was covered. But we did want to have that specific route adopted based on the Transportation Improvement Program. Off-premise signs are only permitted in the HBLI, GI, and CI zoning districts. So, you know, you're somewhat limited in the zoning districts that they can go in. And then they can only be along roads that are within the national highway system or along an interstate that doesn't have a view corridor. So in analyzing the 3 corridors recommended for expansion, and I'll show that in a second, there's only one parcel that's currently zoned HB. It's one development. There are actually 3 parcels, but it's one ownership, but there are 3 separate parcels that are zoned HB. So in looking at the provisions in the statute which prohibit a downzoning, if the commissioners wanted to expand the view corridors to include one or all of the additional sections, the area at the northeast corner of 421 and Shallowford Road would not, we would have to specifically exempt that because it's zoned HB and it's general use. Every other parcel along the other corridors, it would not be a downzoning. The recent zoning case, US 421 and Dalton Road, this is something that came to y'all about 2 years ago now, probably a year and a half, and was ultimately voted down by the commissioners, but this is what kind of shed a light on the fact that we do have some roads that don't have view corridors that perhaps should. So US 421 from the city-county line, city-county zoning jurisdiction line, all the way to the Yadkin River, there is no view corridor protection for billboards along that section. And of course, that's where this billboard was proposed. This is looking west. Along that, you see it's very rural in nature. There are no billboards, very little commercial development. So, you know, staff started looking at, and this is just some stuff that was included in that case, but it's in the western area, the Western Rural Area Development Guide, which, you know, basically does not recommend a lot of commercial. But that started us thinking, hey, let's analyze these other routes and see if there are some areas that we think, you know, might be good to have a view corridor. So in analyzing it, we basically focused on, there's one little pocket in between the city-county line and Louisville that isn't protected by a corridor, and then on the west side of Louisville all the way to the river, that section's not covered. 109 coming from the Davidson County for South County line to the city limits, that's not covered by a view corridor. And then 158 on both sides of Walkertown, in between the city and Walkertown, and then on the north side of Walkertown out to the Guilford County for South County line going up 158. Those were the corridors that we analyzed that we felt like would potentially make sense to have view corridors placed on them. And again, these 3 parcels here were the only parcels that have general use HB zoning that if the county commissioners did implement a view corridor, we would have to specifically exempt those 3 parcels. Everything else along this view corridor, and this view corridor could be adopted and it not have a negative implication for a current property owner.
Are you asking for reactions, or would that come out?
Sure.
Particularly the 421 section, probably heavily traveled for people going to the mountains. Looks great now. I don't think many of the folks that take that route would love to see the trees long cleared for billboards. I'd be in favor of starting with those sections.
And that's the map that I'm on now. There are 5 different sections. It's 3 corridors, but 5 different sections. You got section P, which is kind of filling in the area in between the city-county line and Walkertown. And then on Q would be from the north side of Walkertown to the county line. R would be this little section between the Davidson County and Forsyth County line and the city limit line along 109. And you have 2 little pockets of 421, which would be sections S and T along 421. Those would be the areas that would be potential view corridors. So, like I said, for the annexation policy and for this, we're just looking for some guidance. I've heard, obviously from Commissioner Bessie that he would be interested in potentially S and T. Is there any interest in any other corridors? Is there a consensus among the board on the view corridors? I think the annexation discussion might be a little lengthier, so perhaps if we could get some direction here, and then can sit down and we can just have an annexation discussion, kind of a conversation. But
Yeah, probably up where your P and Q are. I'm trying to think now, what kind of billboard? You're coming into Walkertown, Walkertown's growing, that big intersection. Just trying to think of the people who want to advertise things in Walkertown, like turn here for XYZ restaurant or this, that, and the other that coming ahead. I suspect is there anything in the little bitty P? You could have billboards now. Are there any there? I kind of don't remember. But.
Well, again, you could only there are no billboards there, and you could only have billboards there if you were zoned appropriately, and there is no current
zoning in that now.
Yeah, there is no current zoning that would allow it. One of the things that has kind of changed, and again, obviously outdoor advertising has its place. It serves its function. One of the things that has made it a little less necessary is the state of North Carolina's kind of wayfinding signs where, you exit 125 and, it's got whatever those emblems are, and when you get off, it points you in the direction you need to go and gives you a distance. One of the reasons why we were interested in P and Q is because of the Beltway and the fact that you're going to see additional development and growth in that area. And if there is a desire to kind of, especially Q, to preserve kind of that rural agricultural drive heading towards Reedsville, that might be, we felt like that might be worth preserving. If I had to kind of put priority, I would say that ST and Q are a higher priority than probably R and P. The 109 corridor, there hasn't been a lot of pressure there. I don't necessarily think there's a lot of growth in that area. P, sitting in between the city and Walkertown, it's just such a small segment. But I think that Q could definitely see additional pressure with the Beltway and the interconnected to the north and east.
Yeah, I can see supporting those 3, that your priorities, STQ.
All right. So from what I hear is on that, we could bring corridors S, T, and Q for consideration through a text amendment. So that's something that we can begin working on. I'm not sure. We have a lot of text amendments in the queue. We have the area plan that that's getting ready to kick off. We have a lot of things going on, but that's one of those things that we've had this, we've been doing, obviously, the research and stuff that we have, so I think we can roll that into a text amendment and have it to you sometime, probably this year.
One thing I might do is I might suggest reaching out to Walkertown and seeing whether they have a view on signs versus views in that little segment going to them, UP.
Okay. We will.
Thanks.
With that, I may just go sit down. Like I said, I think that the discussion related to the annexation policy was probably better had as a conversation. And, you know, I've been standing up here talking to you, but I think there's some probably discussion that would probably be good to have as opposed to.
Well, I mean, I'll just comment that I see that as generally speaking, philosophically, that's a good thing. I mean, you're basically, you're not impacting existing citizens. It's new folks moving in. It changes some developer choices and is probably is the downside piece. And other than that, there are not too many downsides because you're eliminating confusion in that, which is important. And you know, it adds to the city footprint in terms of tax resources, and this market, that doesn't seem to be, whether you're in the county only or the city and county and buying a house, that doesn't seem to be a strong consideration. The houses seem to be selling everywhere. So I'm not so sure that's a big issue. So generally speaking, I think there's a lot to gain in that. What happens is you begin to think about that because it does make a lot of difference. We're in an issue with fire district issues. We're studying, and you talk about a spaghetti bowl. I mean, it is really, something that's really confusing. And again, it's history that is locked in these fire districts back 20 and 30 years ago, even some before annexation was rampant. And then the annexation that took place, we've got fire districts that are split all over the place, and we're actually having some of that conversation now, beginning to, about how that could be cleaned up. And for example, Kernersville, is a lot of areas in Kernersville where they would take over jurisdiction. We would contract with them, relinquish, or get out of that. And if you think of this, you showed us 10 examples probably. So it ends up, if that's happening on a regular basis, that change in just fire district protection is a lot of, because that's a resource issue in terms of what it takes to cover areas and all. I mean, that ends up being because that would be ongoing changes. I mean, they would be changing every time a new subdivision, it was built. That may be okay, and that might be a good topic for our fire commission as we get into that to talk about it, because there's kind of a first level of common sense, and then it gets into the weeds, which is a lot more, well, operationally, how does that play out? But ultimately, you're talking about eliminating confusion, because there's a lot. I mean, I've had those calls about people with roads, and they want to know, and they'll make statements. The city promised. I was told I would get this. And I feel sure they were telling the truth. Somebody told them. Probably wasn't the city, for example, but and there they are. And those people that you showed on that map that are basically that DOT did not accept their roads. They're not city-maintained roads. Somebody buys a house 10 years ago, doesn't know any of that. Things were fine, and now the roads are deteriorating, and there's nobody to fix them, and nobody to clear them, nobody to deal with anything with that road. And it's really not, we can all say buyer beware, but it's a really, does everybody think they're looking for a house? I need to ask who's maintaining my road? Or is my road gonna get replaced and repaired if there's a big hole in the road? You make the assumption that somebody is, or you think you know, and that's complicated.
Speaking of common sense, how much satellite annexation goes on in this county by Louisville, Clemens, the city?
Very little. There are some provisions in the general statutes that do regulate satellite annexations, and it deals with the perimeter and the percentage, and it's a complex formula, but there's not a lot of satellite annexation that does go on, and if it is, it's normally kind of a, generally speaking, kind of a one-off. A lot of times, you might have something that, maybe the municipality them in and of themselves have something that's separate and they want it as obviously as part of the city. There's not a lot of satellite that's done from a private developer standpoint. There was something else that you asked related to that I wanted to hit on, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, I think you answered my question, and is the primary purpose of satellite annexation to increase municipal revenues, tax revenues?
Like I said, there's been so little satellite annexation. The city, I don't know that the city has had any satellite annexations over the last 15 years. So I couldn't, to answer your question, no, I don't believe it is because, at least from a city perspective, there hasn't been any. I can't speak to the smaller jurisdictions, but I don't recall any satellites for them either.
No, it's going on out there.
It is,
Yes.
especially in Louisville.
The only one I know of is off of South Stratford, just past where Jonestown Road comes in. There's a little island that was a new development, and it was a request of the developer, I believe. But that was probably 20 years ago.
Well, there's one this year off Williams Road that Louisville annexed. And you're right about the statutory restrictions on that, that has to be within 3 miles and several other buttons have to be pushed.
I know what I was going to mention in relation to that. Annexation agreements, if two jurisdictions come up with an annexation agreement, there are provisions that even get you around the proximity from one to the other. If one jurisdiction, if it's closer to one jurisdiction than the other, then the closer jurisdiction has the ability to annex it unless there's a separate annexation agreement. And the only annexation agreements at this point that are still valid, from my understanding, is Clemens and the city just renewed one that had expired probably 6 or 7 years ago. They just renewed it. Clemens just voted on it in December, beginning of January. There's an annexation agreement between the city and Clemens, but that's the only one that I'm aware of that remains in effect.
But just for me as an individual, I'm really not in favor. I think we should leave it up to the developers, and I'm sure they know who would like to be in the city and who would like to be in the county. I'd love to keep them in the county.
Any other comments or questions, Chris?
I think I have pretty clear marching orders on the view corridors. On the annexation information, I would like some additional guidance. I mean, in other words, if you decided to move forward with a policy, we would have to write the policy and bring it back before you, and you would have to, and you would consider it and ask us to tweak it, or maybe say, we're not interested at all. But I don't know if you want us to bring anything back or not. So if I could get some direction related to that, or if you want us to just not do anything, that's fine as well. I just need, from a work program perspective, we just need to know if there's anything that we need to be working on in relation to this.
I'd be curious what developers have. You all know who comes in and talks to you a lot, that kind of thing. It's like I'm curious if they feel like that, because it may not be as big an issue for them. I mean, it doesn't impact immediate. There's some things that could impact immediate costs. I'm trying to look at the developer's cost. Minor issues, particularly if it requires if it's going to be a different kind of sewer. The sewer would be a big issue, and how that could be very different in standards and all that, so I think
From-
that could be.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Obviously, the one thing that's beneficial in having a city-county utility is the fact that it's the same in the city and the county regardless, because, it's city-county utilities that's administering the utility policy. So the water and sewer theoretically would be
Yeah, I'm
the
just
same
thinking of
whether
the
in
new
the city or the
subdivision
county.
I'm thinking of yeah, and so it really doesn't matter. You're right. It's the argument is with city-county utilities over their standards. It's about their standards. So I'm just trying to think, maybe that would be it'd be nice to know what developers think about that.
Okay.
They may not care, or they may.
Well, let's do this. I mean, obviously, I think we have clear marching orders on the view corridor. On this, let us do some additional research and have some additional discussions with the development community. We can bring that information back to either a future update or a future morning session, and then at that point, then the commissioners can make a decision whether or not you would like us to draft a policy. And if you so desire, then we could do that. If you, at that point, you're like, we're not interested, then at least at that point, we've fully vetted the issue and you've come to the decision that you want to stay the way it is. So let us do that, and we'll bring that back in a few months.
Yeah, you've provided us with the pros. There's not much about what are the problems, what are the cons to this, other than it removes developer choice. So maybe kind of going through that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just quickly add, I have spoken to a couple developers for some of these projects. The concerns, whether they're valid or not, the concerns they have raised is different development standards, and some of them feel that it's more expensive to develop a neighborhood in the city of Winston-Salem rather than in unincorporated areas. And not just Winston-Salem, other municipalities.
And that would be probably in the road construction requirements, do you think?
I believe so, but there could be some other requirements. But I mean, that doesn't do away with the concerns that have been raised about, that Chris raised, but that is what they've expressed.
But clarification, if the lots are split and they're doing a development, then they're going to have to figure out half of the development is going to be different standards.
Well, one of the things, and again, I think it probably needs to bear out through some discussions with the developers. There are some different standards. If you're in growth management area 5, you can use the NCDOT ribbon pavement standards. If you're in GMA 3 or 4, you have to use, it's the same street standards for both the city and the county, and that's specified in the land use ordinance. So, obviously, if someone is planning on doing something in GMA 5 in the rural area and they're able to do ribbon pavement streets, it's going to be cheaper to do those streets there. But if you're developing in the suburban neighborhoods area, but you're on that city-county line, or if you're in a future growth area, the UDO specifies that you have to do curb and gutter and other things. Now, I believe there are some potential state statutes related to that might address that. I'm not sure if it's been adopted yet, but there were some provisions that basically said that local governments can't require a street standard that's more strict than the NCDOT standard, and the NCDOT standard doesn't require curb and gutter, et cetera. So if that were to come into play, it's a moot point, because everyone would be able to do ribbon streets and it would be the same cost everywhere anyway. So let us go back and talk to the developers and get together with a few of them and basically get their concerns, if there are these concerns, if there are other concerns, and or if they have any positives of why they think it's a good idea, and then we could bring that information back to a future meeting.
And another piece of that is, we're talking about standards, and we got into this a little bit in some sewer discussions, but in road construction, for example, I'd be curious to know why the city wants more, different road construction issues than DOT. I mean, DOT's got no telling how many miles of subdivision kind of type roads they maintain. I'm just kind of curious about the reasons for the differences between DOT and cities, for example. I mean, there are a lot of things to accomplish what you're talking about. You can also standardize things across, DOT or state or county standards too. There's a way to, the movement can take place on the things that are causing the problems while we wouldn't want to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could we take a break? This next item is going to be very lengthy.
Sure.
Lots of conversation.
Take about, let's see, if we get 5 after 11, about 8 or 9 minutes. That'd be good. Thank you. And our last item today is a Parks and Recreation Facilities and Fees overview.
I do just want to preface this with the main reason we're bringing this to your attention. Number one, we're in the process of trying to establish fees for the new agricultural park event center. And in doing that, there's some questions been raised in like, what do we currently do? How are our fees set? I don't think that's anything that the board's really ever discussed. And so I thought it was just an interesting topic for the board to hear more about our facilities and fees. And if there's any a different policy direction you want us to go in, or you're good with how we've been handling things, we just would love some feedback. So I'll turn it over to Chris Weevil, our Parks Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity today to present. So today, we're going to present on our fees, and just kind of give a general overview of the park and how we do our fees. The objective of today's presentation is to kind of give a high-level overview of our department mission, of our parks, the amenities we have in our parks, a snapshot of our current rates, our fees and our charges approval process, and then kind of some of our utilization throughout the department. So to begin, our mission is to operate and to develop and maintain a park system that meets the recreational needs of its visitors. Our core functions are park operations and maintenance, natural resource stewardship, management of enterprise activities, and in management of special events and our facility rentals. Just to kind of give an overview of our parks, we now have 10 parks in our system. Tanglewood, Horizons, Triad, Kernsville Lake, CG Hill, Walkertown, Joni Moser, Union Cross, 421 River Park, and our newest park, Blues Lake Park. That's just under 2,700 total acres of parkland in Forsyth County, with about a third of that being roughly 1,000 acres that are developed.
Good question.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you consider the Holland Park part of this inventory?
We don't know. That's one that is
Yeah.
managed kind of on the Health and Human Services
Okay.
campus with General Services.
Just
and
wanted to know.
Mhm.
Thank you.
In the Parks Department, we have three basic areas that we feel that we operate in, or that we do operate in. The first is our core services and facilities, then our enterprise activities, and then our leased operations. So our core services and facilities, that's our day-to-day publicly provided parks and recreation amenities, basically just focused on access, safety, maintenance, and those are the things that are typically funded by general revenue. Our enterprise activities are revenue-generating operations that are run like a business within the system. Those are user-supported fees and aim to be self-sufficient. And third is our leased operation. Those are our facilities or services that are owned by the county in the Parks Department, but they're operated by third-party tenants under lease agreements, and revenues and responsibilities are allocated per contract. Just as a little bit of a snapshot of our inventory of what we have in our core facilities and services, basically our trails, something that we're most proud of is our trails, 36 miles worth of trails. We've got playgrounds in every park now. There's 14 playgrounds in all. We've got tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts, volleyball courts, softball fields, shelters, multiple fishing sites, disc golf courses, fishing, pedal boats, picnic areas, picnic tables, and then special events. The main guiding principle here for this particular core area for us is affordability and affordable access.
Just real quick, you didn't have a map, so in the future, it probably would be helpful for me to just
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
map and then just target.
I know exactly where they're all at, but
I got you. Yes,
we
sir.
can get you a map. Yes,
Thank
ma'am,
you.
not a problem. All right, our second area is our enterprise areas or enterprise activities. All of these are at Tanglewood right now. That's our golf operations, the Tanglewood RV campground, the aquatic center, our indoor facility rentals, and our Festival of Lights. Our main fee, or our main guiding principle there is our cost recovery targets. And lastly is our leased operations. Again, all of these leased operations are again at Tanglewood. That's our accommodations or manor house operation. That's the manor house, the guest house, our apartment complex that's just behind the manor house, and the cottages. The clubhouse grill operations, the BMX track at Tanglewood, the tennis center, the stable operations, and then the soft golf field at Tanglewood. And those fees there, since they're third party, are established by the tenant. We provided a Current rate snapshot, just kind of multiple different things that we've got here, just a snapshot for you. You'll see that some of our areas, like our community park shelters, they have multiple fees. That's the first one that you see is a weekday fee. The second number is a weekend fee. There are several areas that have just a single fee, a per hour fee, like our volleyball courts and our softball fields, things along those lines. Our championship our championship course, our rentals course, they have some different weekday rates there. Then our Red Barn rentals, Walnut Hall rentals, we have 1 day up to multiple day rentals that you can see the different prices for we've got there. You should have a sheet there at your desk as well that shows our entire fee schedule. And there at the end of that particular slide is the agricultural park that the county manager mentioned. So for us, our fee structure principles, or our guiding principles for those are affordability and equitable access, cost recovery targets by service type, competitive pricing or benchmarking, and then transparency and consistency. So in this fee approval process, the formal authority for approving new fees and changes rests with the county manager's office per a board adopted resolution back in 1990. The department aims to manage fee decisions within our annual budget cycle, but however, off-cycle requests do arise, and we pursue those if necessary due to material needs such as unexpected costs, market shifts, things along those lines. Those are all supported, of course, supported by data. Typically, these are our seasonal operations, kind of like the pool or aquatic center, just as an example. The department's role is to develop a detailed fee proposal. We execute operational changes once those are approved, and then we implement the approved fee schedules under the manager's direction. So in this fee proposal that we prepare for the county manager, there are 5 key items or 5 key elements. Number 1 is the introduction. That's a clear description of the current fee, the schedule, and then the effective date. Secondly is the financial analysis, which gives fiscal year to date and prior year revenues, direct and allocated cost analysis, cost recovery considerations, a realistic, optimistic revenue estimate. Third is demand considerations. Those are historical utilization trends, our reservation data, and our pricing analysis. Market and benchmarking data is fourth. We do comparative pricing with peer counties, with regional providers, and or public-private sector equivalents for us. And fifth is equity and access considerations. We address fee exemptions, reduced rates for community groups, things along those lines. So past that, we'll move into some of our key indicators. This particular metric is our total car count for the 10 parks that we show across the department. You see we had a peak there in the I think that's FY20. Of course, that's COVID year, and that's when we got all sorts of people came out to parks during that year. But you can see it's kind of plateaued past that, but has maintained a fairly steady line. Our second indicator is our total estimated visitation. That is the car count that you just saw with a multiplier of 3 or 3 persons per car, and that is a general industry standard multiplier. So you can see that basically that mirrors the total car count. We keep our visitation and our statistics are based basically upon the car count. That is something that we can actually definitely keep up with.
Yeah, you can do that certainly at Tanglewood and maybe to some extent Triad, but I'm trying to think about everywhere. I'm kind of curious how you estimate that. Just like at CG Hill, for example, how would you estimate?
We have car counters at every location, at every
So you
park
just have a thing
location.
on the road thing that drives over with wheel counts.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
The next indicator of slide shows our total golf rounds played. You can see prior to COVID, we were kind of in a decline. During COVID and post-COVID, we had a very huge increase in rounds played. And post-COVID, we've kind of plateaued. Last year was another good year, and this year so far, 24 was a good year. 25 was very close. We're on track this year to meet basically the same numbers.
When you think of FY '26, would you not anticipate a little increase in that with the new clubhouse fully operational now?
We will, that's why I say we look to be on target to meet or exceed the numbers that you see there. Yeah.
I would expect exceeding with the new clubhouse. I mean, you got a lot of stuff fixed. I mean, it was been, was over at the barn and all that stuff and back and forth.
Phones are definitely ringing, so we know that once we get completely operational in there with our food vendor, everything we've got a lot of folks looking for tournaments and things along the line, so the clubhouse is gonna be a driver, you're right. Okay, the next slide is just showing a graph of our total RV campground sites booked at Tanglewood. You see that stays, it's plateaued off around the 9,500, 9,600 sites booked a year.
If it were at full capacity all the time, what would that number look like?
I have to call on my numbers guy in the back. I don't know. Right now, we're running about 80 to 85% occupancy. That's on 44 sites. We count those, per night. I haven't done that math.
Well, and it's going to be a little seasonal. I mean,
It is.
I suspect there are not lots of people out there today. Maybe, I mean.
But they're not. We closed down in December. We closed down in December until the 1st of March.
Okay.
And that's for our staff to get in there and do some maintenance, because if we didn't, there would be people there year round. We have people call every day that want to rent in December, January, February.
That's interesting.
Yep.
That may
Cold,
be,
cold weather campers, yep.
yeah, because interesting. Okay, thanks.
And we have shied away from that somewhat just because of the winter seasons. There's exposed pipe and things like that. We don't want folks to damage their stuff, but there are some diehard RVers that tell us that happened to them. So that's just one thing. When we started off back in 2008, I believe, we were really looking at, for at least the campground, were the day type users. But as time has progressed, we see there are these huge Class A type RVs that are coming in. So a little bit different type of use now than what it was when we started. So that may be something we can consider for the future, definitely.
I believe we have a stay limit policy.
We do under 14 days. 14 days is as far as you can.
Without that, you'd have people permanently.
Oh, yeah, we would. And it's neat. We've kind of looked at our usage there at the campground, and most, I don't know the exact percentage right offhand, we can get that for you, but there's a great percentage of the folks that come to the Tanglewood campground that live within like a 100-mile radius. And a lot of the folks that come to the campground and stay for 14 days or more live in Forsyth County. So it's just a weekend getaway for them. It's something that's nice. It's somewhere Tanglewood's nice to be. So I think that's one of those places that people want. All right, we just came out of this year's Festival of Lights, but you can see the Festival of Lights count we have here. The peak that you see is, of course, the COVID year. Everything was closed down during COVID, except for the Festival of Lights. We were open. That was a great year for us. We have since, kind of trailed off over that. This year, as you can see, we do have numbers in there for FY '26. We are just a slight increase over our FY '26 or FY '25 numbers. I'm sorry. The pool is basically just the opposite of what you just saw with the Festival of Lights. We were closed. The big dip you see there, the pool was closed during COVID, so that's the reason for that dip. You see that our line's not nice and flat there for our attendance from 22 to 25. Each one of those valleys that you see is basically completely due to weather. Those were years where we had Memorial Day or Labor Day that was cold and wet, or the season was rainy. So we're very, very weather dependent at that particular location. Here is a slide that shows the average occupancy of the Tanglewood Park picnic shelters.
Gracious.
You can see that we stay, for our weekend rates, we're staying in the 65% occupancy. Of course, our daytimes are much lower than that, but we stay in the 10 to 12% range there on the weekdays. The next slide shows our Tanglewood facility rentals. Our facility rentals are our indoor facilities, Red Barn, Walnut Hall, Woodland Hall. Those were the areas, and the clubhouse will come online here shortly. So you can see those lines. Weekdays versus weekends. Weekends, again, are much busier for us. The next slide are our past department actuals. So you can see our revenue and expenses, and then our net total is there at the bottom. Stay fairly consistent up to basically 25, and you see a little bit of a gap, widening gap there in 25. Some of that's driven by some personnel cost increases and a few service contract cost increases. A lifeguard contract for the pool is one of our service contracts there on the expense side.
So let me ask you, in those numbers, does that include the core, kind of your expenses of your core services and facilities day-to-day?
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's included in there.
Yes, sir.
So the question becomes, what should we expect the core facility cost kind of to be? If we didn't have any of the enterprise issues?
Yeah, that was going to be my next slide here. Kind of is our cost recovery based on the slide that you just saw previous. You can see our cost recovery there is the dotted line. That's for the entire department. With those enterprise areas and the core functions in there, we're actually recovering about 60% of our costs. So we've got 40% of that is expenses to those core areas. So if we didn't have that, I would estimate we would probably be probably closer to 80% in that range on our cost recovery. We would have quite a bit more cost if we took some of those things out, like our indoor facilities. We didn't have the fee recoveries that we've got there now. The expenses would definitely show a difference.
Tell me sort of how you figured that out. I mean, where those let me see if I can pick, well, Tanglewood's the big one and the complicated one. So
I'm going to bring up Constantine, our business manager here as well. He actually did this presentation, so he can give you a little bit better overview.
So, good afternoon, Commissioners. So essentially, the line at the top is the Tanglewood, which is where our enterprise facilities are concentrated. And that's the percentage right there that, the average is beyond 80%. The line at the bottom in blue, though, that's your community parks.
well, tell me exactly what you're saying the total cost of the park is basically 80-something% recovered from revenue.
Correct.
And so if we didn't have the revenue cost items, we'd be paying a whole bunch more to keep the park. Of course, we wouldn't also have a lot of the expenses. There are expenses that go along with each of the cost centers.
That's right. So that.
I'm just trying to sort out. It's kind of hard to sort all that out.
So the green line includes like everything we have in Tanglewood, which is enterprise activities, including the maintenance side, which would address the core functions and services. So the enterprise activities alone, those at least last year run a percentage of 124 margin. The maintenance side of it was only 10% cost recovery. So when combined, on average, you end up with that 82%.
Constantine, in your packet yourself, because I know we had lots of slides and we took some out, by chance, do you have the one that just shows the enterprise fund that you could put on the Elmo?
Yes, I
That
believe so.
might be helpful, maybe.
Yes, trying to check.
It would have been one of the extras we didn't include in the presentation.
We did have a few, so unfortunately, I may not have that one printed out with me. So we can certainly provide that information if needed. Trying to figure out how to operate this one. Okay. So the picture right here is only enterprise operations total for Tanglewood. So the line at the bottom here is the net total. The one at the top, I'll figure here because I don't have it dashed or dotted, because
The top one's revenue and the,
top is the revenue, and then the bottom one right there is the expense. So the dip right there in FY '19, obviously, because the golf is the primary driver, we had the renovations going on, I think in 18, 19 or something along those lines. So once the golf was in full swing, you see the net total kind of increases, obviously. And again, the primary driver there is the golf, because they bring in almost $3 million. And then the pattern, as you can see, it continued to stay positive. So. So this one is Tanglewood Golf alone. That essentially mimics, to some extent, the previous picture. Being so big as part of the enterprise activities that we have. So last year, they brought in revenue 2.7, in expense, they had 2.3, and net was close to 400,000. You can see the pattern the year before and so on and so forth. And like Chris mentioned, the primary driver on the expense side, because here in gold you see an increase of about $100,000 was the expense. For the entire department, we had an increase of about 10% in personnel alone from the prior year, from FY '24. So it was like almost $500,000 variance on the expense side, which obviously had an impact on the revenue.
I'm not a golfer, so I don't follow or fully understand the trends there. Was there a particular reason why there was a steady decline and a particularly bad year in FY '19, and then it reversed, came back up?
Golf
Golf
was
course
on the
was
decline,
closed.
and we did a major renovation of the championship course that year, so we were closed for over 12 months.
Thank you. What about the previous years? Were conditions declining and use was declining as a result?
That was the reason for the renovation. So we were having, at that time, we had bent grass, which is a cool season grass. We transitioned to Championship Bermuda on the championship course. We redid all the bunkers, so that's just increased our level of play.
Okay. Thank you.
Are these types of charts helpful, Mr. Chair? Does it answer your questions?
Yes,
Okay.
actually, very much.
Is there a delinquency on fee collection? I wouldn't understand why if they're all prepaid.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, you get all of that.
We do, we do. There's one
One way or
case
the
that
other.
I remember. But
Well, I was going to sort of ask this when we got into the next section with all these fees, but there are a lot of, shelters and tennis courts and soccer fields and those kind of things in parks that are, where there's nobody, I don't know how you're not collecting all that money. That money is not being collected. That's what I was kind of getting at. You're not collecting a tennis court out somewhere.
No, sir, what we've done with our fees for like our tennis courts, things along those lines, if you wanted to come to, Walkertown Park, and you wanted to reserve a court so you know that you had time, that, Constantine and I weren't out there, just playing, day use, you can do that. So that's what that fee is. But if you show up and the court's open, yeah, you're out there playing, there's no fee. That's just one of our core services.
first come, first served basis, but the courts are reservable if you want to have a peace of mind.
We run into that definitely with the pickleball. The pickleball folks, they can come out, they'll play first come, first serve, but there's so many pickleball folks that if you want to call and reserve a court so you guarantee yourself a court, that we just got a fee for that.
So I'm surprised they're not fights that break out over, I served this court. Well, no, you didn't. How do you know that? How can you prove that? Right, 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 right. Well, the pickleball people actually work people in.
They do.
I mean, you can show up at pickleball all by yourself, and they'll just work you into a game in a rotation. I mean, that's one of the beauties of that.
But there are some, folks that we find that don't want to play with that. They want to play with their own, folks. So we gave them the opportunity to have that rental reservation, so you could make have a guaranteed court to be available.
And the camping facilities, they're closed several months a year for either, is it maintenance or weather or both?
It was for both, yes, sir. It's basically, it's for weather. We operate through the first week of December. We have a large group of, I say a large group, there's a dedicated group of folks that rent every year through that first week of December. We give a package deal where they can go through the light show. So they want to be there and drive through the light show. They love it. So we've done that. But past that, it becomes weather related, just for the water and sewer hookups, just depending on, the temperatures. And then past that is for us to get in there and be able to do some maintenance and be ready for the upcoming season. The way that, if you've been to the Tanglewood Campground, it's very, very tight. So, mowing, getting up leaves, any of that type of stuff we go through, and we kind of deadwood, prune all the trees that are in there. Just, we do everything that we can in that 3 months. And then once we open back up in March, March through that December period, we're just doing daily maintenance. We've got some campground hosts that help us out there as well, so that's kind of why we've kind of done that.
But if you could keep it open all those months where it's closed now,
We could.
what you described about the winter campers, there would be significant revenue associated with that?
There would be some. I'm not exactly sure how significant it would be, but we definitely get the calls for that. We do.
Thanks.
Well, you could do half the, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, but you could do half the campground, and say, and then we're gonna give you some swap offs. And I'm sure that I'm not sure, but I suspect that the water hookups have insulation. I mean, they're not gonna freeze.
The hookups we have are frost-free hydrants. It's from the hydrant to the actual RV itself. Is that hose, but most of the campers, they know they've got their.
I would think.
All that
And then
type of
that's
stuff.
on them.
But that's right, that's
Right.
on them. They call us first, but even though that is their issue, but we work with it.
Yeah, that may be an opportunity.
Yeah,
With a low-
especially with site rotation, which is what he was talking about.
And so in front of you, we also have a lot of data just for your purposes. And thank you, Constantine, for pulling all this together so that you can just see the trends since fiscal year 17. It talks about every single facility, the utilization, what our facilities are. For me, it's more of kind of a little bit of a policy discussion on, do you think these fees are, reasonable? Are you okay with us moving forward with this type of process? Again, as Chris noted, in 1990, you've delegated all authority to setting fees for parks to the manager. Do you want to continue to do that? I don't have strong feelings about it either way, so you're not going to hurt my feelings. Do you want it to be more of discussion as part of the budget process? It is incorporated into the budget document, and so you are aware of it. Just really, again, as we're working to set the agricultural park, we just thought it would be a good time for you to see what we're even doing, and see if you are okay with the direction we're moving in or want to move in a different direction.
I think from a sort of a policy side, I think probably what the board ought to approve is when there are changes. For example, it's in the budget document somewhere. So if there was like a little highlight of here's where we've had, I'm assuming mostly in all cases it'd be an increase. This is where our fees have increased. We're proposing these increases. I think knowing changes would be helpful, and just knowing this is, I suspect none of us knew all this or had a real inkling. We knew a little bit about the overall. We've seen a couple of these charts similar to the one that's actually up on the screen right now, but I think that knowing that would be a good thing. And the real question I have, it really gets into your marketing, because part of the issue is the benchmarking, is to really I don't know if our $2 million, whatever we're ended up spending sort of to run the enterprise, whether that's a reasonable investment of our total budget compared to other counties, for example, I mean, kind of percent of budget dedicated to parks, and for the benchmarking side of the individual places, like clubhouse rental, the barn rentals, et cetera, and that's, what's driving part of this is the ag center issue. I'm kind of curious about, because the utilizations are not, I looked at one of those charts, are not huge on some of those. I mean, they're like, an average, running in the 46, 50% on the weekends, which means half the weekends aren't rented in some of those. And I'm curious if price is driving some users away, was what I'm kind of curious.
Just as an example, one of the things that we've done when we kind of go back and look at some of these fees, the Red Barn is an example. We did a fee increase for that. I believe it was last season. And we did some package rates. We did some 2 and 3 day package rates. We went through a season and we saw that those package rates, our utilization went down. Now, the utilization was capturing a single rental. It wasn't capturing the number of days, but we did have a lot of folks call in. We got rid of basically what was a single day rental for the Red Barn. So we brought that back, or we brought that back this year so people can have that option of having that single day rental. What we run into a lot of times is we'll have the Red Barn, and again, that's what I'm using as my example, normally it's a 2-day rental. Folks will want to set up on a Friday and have their wedding and reception on a Saturday. It's very hard for us to market that Sunday. That Sunday is the day that we're dropping out of there. Vice versa, a lot of times we get a reunion or something like that, a family picnic, family get together. They'll want to do it on a Sunday, after church, and we can get that Saturday, Sunday, but we may miss the Friday. So we look at our stuff basically a year out. So folks can rent. They call it a day. They can rent 12 months from now. They can't rent much farther. They can't rent any farther than that. So we kind of have that rolling 12-month period just so we can kind of keep up and keep our facilities kind of keep a snapshot of what's going on, what we're having there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, who do you benchmark with?
We
For example, what facilities would benchmark with a Red Barn, for example?
We try to benchmark with peer agencies, other local government, or other local county governments, but we also do some private, a private benchmark that we've done for Tanglewood, as example, is basically just across the river is Winmock. Winmock is a private facility that does, basically they're a wedding event venue. We in no way compared to their prices there, we're much more affordable than the Winmark. I think Winmark is probably in the $4,500 to $5,000, if not more.
A little different facility.
Yeah, just a little different, and that's just for their rental. That's not for the rest of the package that they put together for that.
Yeah.
And then we're much lower than that, for our fees. So we looked at Bryan Park in Guilford County. We use Guilford County a lot as we work with them quite a bit at Triad. We look at all of our surrounding counties, any of those types of indoor facilities. We do look at some private areas. Anywhere else that we look at?
From what I remember, I think we have about at least five benchmarking locations. Winmark was one of them. The Reynolda Barn as well was the other one, and I think there were a few operated by Guilford County as well. So again, every time we try to make any changes, we would revise the prices of those benchmarkings as well and kind of look around if there's any new venue in town, so to speak, so we can compare that data as well. So.
And I think the policy question is, are we trying to be lower than them? Is there how much lower? Are we trying to be it's what's comparable, right?
Well,
and
it's comparable, and if whatever that market is, there's some assumption for those that are looking that they may you might get more business, more days, more money with lower rates. I mean, that's in some areas that could happen. I think that's part of the question. And I think there's another question that kind of bears to the issue of Forsyth County people versus others versus nonprofits. I mean, we've kind of not talked about any kind of differentiated. There's a little, you suggest some differentiating like in your number 5, fees and charges approval process, equity and access consideration, addressing fee exemptions, reduced rates for community groups. What are some of those things that do fee exempt, what would get a fee exemption?
Most of the fee exemptions that we have right now are basically internal county or state, local type, agencies like that. Most of them, I would say probably 75 to 80% of them are, we work a lot with the health department, we work a lot with cooperative extension. Those folks will rent out some of their shelters for some of their programs throughout the year. We try to put those requests in a Monday through Thursday time frame, just because Monday through Thursday, as you can see on our utilization, is very much lower than that Thursday, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we normally don't rent to those internal agencies. We don't give fee exemptions on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, just so we can kind of leave that open for the general public.
So we really, our main differentiation is weekend, weekday. We don't currently have a nonprofit rate. We don't, we really don't. It's weekend, weekday at this point.
I had a question about the shelter rental fees. Is there any particular reason why you don't benchmark against the Forsyth County municipalities?
Benchmark against them. Well, we do look at them. One of the ones that we've looked at, I know we look at, of course, we look at the city. We look at some of the other municipalities. When it comes to certain different, certain municipalities have certain things that Tanglewood may not have. Something Louisville, Clemens may not have. So we try to find anything that are similar. And we do have done that in the past, and we will continue to do that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the run-of-the-mill sort of family or small group suitable picnic shelter. And the last I remember checking, the county fees were higher than the city of Winston-Salem fees.
Yes, we are.
And the city ties their base rate to city residency, as I recall. If I'm remembering that correctly, and it hasn't changed, then basically city residents have access to lower sort of family, picnic shelter costs in the parks than county residents outside the city. And again, if I'm remembering that correctly and it hasn't changed, it would relate, I think, to a different philosophy of cost recovery for the public park shelters, public park facilities in general. And I might want to take a look at that question if there's a big gap in just the run-of-the-mill kind of shelter fees, not the high capacity, unique kind of shelters.
And I don't have the data here in front of me now, but I know in my tenure, the picnic shelters, the fee increases that we've had for those have been few over the past 35 years that I've been in the county. I know that we have raised them. They're few. I think they are higher than the city rates. But during my tenure as well, we have never, to my knowledge, at least to your point, have had a county resident type rate or anything like that. It's just been a flat rate for weekdays or weekends.
Could you check on that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would suspect that the utilization of those shelters, of the small ones, like that we're talking about, probably not huge anyway. I mean, it's not a real part of our, I think that's a case where being cheaper is better on that. I mean, for citizens and people that want to use it, because that's a peanut issue in this big picture. That's probably in the just thousands of dollars, not even tens of thousands. It's a small amount of money, and that would probably be good. But and I do have some. Part of this discussion came up over some use at the Ag Center from a nonprofit that has had a relationship with Ag Extension for many years, and whether that relationship was appropriate or not, it's been a 50-year one, and it's been basically no charge, and it's related kind of to Ag Extension issues. I mean, and quite kind of, there are all sorts of unusual types of users. And Ag Extension reaches out, by extension, by its name, reaches out to, extends to the community in a lot of ways. And I think that just struck me as we're not being particularly sensitive to both the past nor the cost. And I probably don't want to get into, I mean, this kind of individual issue, you don't want to get it too in the weeds, and it's not exactly resolved yet, but
I mean, what I will say is we do have other county facilities outside of parks that we allow community groups to use during the day when we are there for free. And so even with the agricultural park, they have their own outside of the event center, there's a large space, part of their kitchen, that is part of the extension office that will be able to be utilized for community groups as they are today, but during the working hours when staff is there. Outside of working hours, then for any group currently, I'll just say currently, then any group would have to pay a facility fee for whether it's the new Ag Park Event Center, because we contract out for security and janitorial for that. And for me, I'm not going to require staff to come in after hours on something that's unrelated to county business. And then for obviously all of the facilities that Chris also mentioned. So there are other alternatives for groups. Libraries do not charge for their spaces. And again, there's other kind of, some other kinds of facilities. And so I think the question really is for us, do we want a nonprofit rate? Again, we'd have to do an analysis of what that could look like for revenue. But as the chairman said, I mean, our utilization's not fantastic. Although the truth is, we don't know. Maybe the utilization percentages are normal for facilities. We have not done a large enough study yet, but something we're looking into. If we decreased rates, would our revenue actually increase because we'd have higher utilization? Those are all unknowns because this is just what we've been doing for a really long time. And so it's kind of why we just wanted to bring it to the board. Are you okay with it? Do we want to look at our, philosophy, our policy? We're kind of open, but in absence of that, we would be setting some rates for the ag park similar to what we've done for our other facilities.
yeah, well, for me, I'd probably feel better if I knew a little bit more and saw the benchmarking stuff. I mean, rates are all about benchmarking, all about competition. And you mentioned 5 places, or for example, for some of the Tanglewood issues of the barn or whatever. I mean, it's just a curiosity to see that basically that we really, and I'm a little surprised on the shelters that we're higher than the city. I mean, that's not much that we're ever higher on the city on anything. And that would make some sense to even be the same when we're talking about sort of peanut kind of rates for things.
One thing to keep in mind with the shelters at Tanglewood, if you'll look at those rates, they're higher than our community park rates, and they're higher than our triad park rates, and that is because alcohol is allowed at Tanglewood and has been for however many years. I mean, it's just something that's there. So that cost is a little bit higher just because a lot of the times to clean up the types of groups, things that we get there. So that's one reason for a difference that you'll see in those shelters, just the shelters alone at Tanglewood.
Chris, I appreciate this report. It's very obvious to me that you and your staff know what you're doing, and I appreciate what you do at Tanglewood and all our other parks. I don't know how you can keep up with all of this. I'm fine with the 1990 resolution. Amazingly, I was not here in 1990, but it says that the authority is with our county manager. And I trust our county manager, and I think she also knows what she's doing. If things are not right, what I have to go by, and I hope I'm not opening up, jinxing myself, but in the years I've been here, I've never had a phone call complaining about rates at any of our parks. And that's what I have to go by as a commissioner is my citizens. Are they happy or are they not happy? And I've not had a complaint. So I appreciate what you do. I think it's great, and I'm happy with what we're doing.
Gloria, I would have to, Commissioner Wizenhut, I would have to piggyback on those remarks and say the same thing. For me, I'm going to rely on the subject matter expert. I do appreciate the fee and charges schedule, and I appreciate the comments, the rationale behind it. As long as we have that, I have that, I can make the best decisions relative to this. So thank you.
Well, I probably think including a sheet that shows the increases or changes would be helpful. I'm just trying to think about the things we do. In the health department, there are 1 million fees, and we approve all of those by action. And I can tell you, I know zero about what those fees are for or whether they're comparable or whatever, but yet we approve those, but we don't approve these when there's a zillion fees. And we do know a little something about parks and recreation kind of issues. So I mean, I kind of think that's a policy matter. If you're going to approve fees for the health department and all their medical things and all their pieces, then we probably ought to have something that at least shows, instead of having a list like this, that shows here are the items we've made changes in. Are there no changes?
Yep. So just a quick comment on that. And you are correct for the health department. It does go through the Health and Human Services Board for recommendation. That they vet that pretty closely, but ultimately the final approval rests with the county commissioners. For parks, I do just want to mention there are sometimes off-budget cycle fee changes, and we can certainly add that as a report to the board during the just commissioner meeting. So just informational, certainly happy to do that. And then for the budget itself, absolutely happy to just highlight what changes may be as part of the budget. If that's what amenable to the board, that's easier enough for us to do.
I can just toss in that I'm not interested in micromanaging the fees. I did have one policy question that I thought it would be good to have a comparison on, and might have suggestions, but I wouldn't feel the need to have the final control on that. I agree that we have a competent and reasonable county manager making these decisions.
Aside from camping, lodging, shelter facilities, who can stay there overnight?
Nobody. We don't allow any type of tent camping. We don't allow any type of overnight stay at any of our parks other than overnight accommodations and the RV campground.
Okay, if they get a day pass, they're supposed to be gone by the 10 p.m.
Right. The general park use, if you're walking your dog, you're
Right.
jogging, whatever, that's we're dawn to dusk. Well, sunrise to sunset. If you have a rental, a picnic shelter or something, there's a time frame with that. So at 10 p.m. is our time that we shut down.
Okay. So when it says every day after 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., it doesn't mean after 10 p.m.?
No, sir.
Okay. Just one more question. Is a non-swimmer someone who can't swim or someone who just won't go in the water?
It's just somebody won't go in the water. We have a lot of grandparents that will bring their grandchildren to the pool, and they'd rather sit in the shade and watch them swim versus getting in the water.
Well, they might all be non-swimmers.
They're all swim tested by our lifeguards, so that's anybody that goes in the water is swim tested.
Oh, okay, good.
This was very helpful. I mean, there's a lot of data, and appreciate the information as presented was pretty easy to digest, which was very good.
I'll give credit where credit due, and that's the numbers guy that's behind me here, so he keeps us straight.
Good. Any other questions for Chris? All righty.
Thanks for your time.
We sort of finished on time. That's pretty amazing. It's good. Thank you.
Starting 2026 off right.
Ms. Mann,
Don't count on it.
could I bring up our January 29th meeting that we had a workshop starting at 9 o'clock, and we have a 6 o'clock meeting. Could we move that workshop to 1 rather than 9?
Good idea.
On the staff level, we are certainly more than happy to do that if the board would like.
Do y'all like?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay,
They're sure everybody's good with that.
thank you.
Thank
Good.
you.
All righty, we're done.